We live in a world where noise is the norm. Not just the sound of traffic or the constant buzzing of our phones, but the noise of opinions, expectations, and comparisons. From the moment we wake up, we are bombarded with messages about who we should be, what we should want, and how we should live. And in this endless chatter, the quiet voice of your own heart gets drowned out. That's why solitude isn't just a choice, it's a necessity. Being alone is not about loneliness. Loneliness is a craving for connection that feels empty and unfulfilled. Solitude, on the other hand, is an intentional decision to step away from the crowd so you can hear yourself again. It's the art of making space, mental, emotional, and spiritual, for your own thoughts to take shape without interference. When you're constantly surrounded by people, you unknowingly begin to mirror them. Their moods influence yours, their ambitions start to reshape your goals, and their fears start planting seeds in your own mind. You don't even notice it happening because it's so gradual. But here's the truth: if you never learn to stand apart, you may spend your entire life living as a reflection of someone else's desires instead of your own. Great thinkers, artists, leaders, they all understood this. They knew that the deepest breakthroughs happen when you're willing to disconnect from the noise. Think of solitude as a mirror that doesn't just reflect your face, but your soul. In the stillness, you start to see patterns in your life you've been ignoring. You see which relationships are nourishing you and which ones are quietly draining you. You see the dreams you've buried under practicality and the excuses you've been feeding yourself for years. But solitude requires courage, because when you strip away the distractions, you have no one else to blame, no one else to hide behind. You are face to face with yourself, the raw, unfiltered you. And that can be uncomfortable. It's easier to keep busy, to keep surrounded, to keep distracted. But easy doesn't change you. Psychologically, spending intentional time alone strengthens your self-awareness. Self-awareness is the foundation of confidence, because you stop being confused about who you are and what you want. When you know yourself, truly know yourself, you are less likely to be swayed by temporary trends or manipulated by other people's opinions. You become grounded, anchored. Philosophically, solitude is liberation. The Stoic philosophers often spoke about the importance of retreating into yourself, not to escape life, but to return to it with greater clarity. Marcus Aurelius, of the Roman emperor, wrote in his Meditations that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If you are constantly absorbing the thoughts, fears, and agendas of everyone around you, what color is your soul becoming? When you are alone, you reclaim authorship over your own mind. You start filtering your decisions through your values instead of peer pressure. You stop chasing things you don't truly want. You begin to question, is this dream mine? Or did I inherit it from someone else? Is this goal truly aligned with my spirit, or is it a performance for approval? The beautiful thing is that the more you get comfortable with your own company, the less desperate you become for external validation. That desperation is what traps people in toxic relationships, unhealthy work environments, and self-destructive habits. But when you learn to enjoy solitude, you start choosing people and situations from a place of wholeness, not lack. You stop settling. You stop tolerating less than you deserve. And here's something interesting: solitude is not just for the deep thinkers or the creative souls. It's for everyone. Whether you're building a business, raising a family, or navigating a career change, taking intentional time alone sharpens your decision-making. It strips away the fog. It lets you see which opportunities are right for you and which are just distractions wearing the mask of opportunity. Some of you might say, "But I'm not comfortable being alone." And to that I say, you're not uncomfortable with the aloneness, you're uncomfortable with yourself. That's the deeper work. To sit with yourself long enough until your own presence feels like home. That doesn't happen overnight. At first, it might feel awkward, even restless. You might instinctively reach for your phone or turn on the TV just to avoid the quiet. But if you can resist that urge, even for 10 minutes a day, you'll start to notice a shift. The restlessness will soften into peace, and peace will grow into clarity. And when you reach that place, something powerful happens. You no longer fear being left out, because you've stopped believing that your worth depends on inclusion. You no longer fear losing people, because you've stopped tying your identity to their presence. You no longer feel pressured to please everyone, because you've learned to honor your own voice first. of the world will still be noisy. People will still have opinions about your choices. But when you've spent enough time in solitude, their noise won't drown you anymore. You'll hear it, but you'll know the difference between their voice and your own. And that is freedom. So I'll leave you with this. If you've been avoiding time alone because you think it's empty or pointless, remember, solitude is not the absence of life. It's the space in which your true life begins to take shape. Dare to be alone. Dare to listen to yourself, and dare to become someone you'd be proud to keep company with. Once you've taken that first step of spending intentional time alone, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to see yourself differently. You begin to recognize strengths you didn't even know you had. And slowly a quiet, steady self-confidence begins to take root. Not the kind that's loud or flashy, but the kind that's unshakable. The reason solitude builds confidence is simple. You stop outsourcing your sense of worth. Most people don't even realize how much of their self-esteem is borrowed from other people's approval. We post something online and wait for the likes. We share our achievements and secretly look for applause. We measure our value by how many people notice us, validate us, or agree with us. But the danger of living this way is that your confidence becomes fragile, because if the applause stops, so does your belief in yourself. When you learn to stand on your own, you begin to separate who you are from what people think of you. And that's the first step to real confidence. The kind that doesn't rise and fall with public opinion. You start making decisions because they feel right to you, not because they'll earn approval. Psychologically, this shift is profound. Confidence is not built by being told you're enough. It's built by proving to yourself that you are. When you navigate challenges on your own, when you survive the hard days without a crowd cheering you on, you begin to trust yourself. You see evidence that you can figure things out, and that evidence becomes the foundation of your self-belief. And let's be honest, the world is full of situations where you'll have to stand alone. There will be moments when your path doesn't make sense to anyone else. There will be times when you're misunderstood, doubted, even criticized. If your confidence depends on being understood by everyone, you'll crumble. But if you've learned to stand alone, you'll be able to keep walking, even when no one's walking beside you. Philosophically, self-confidence born from solitude is a form of freedom. It's the freedom to live authentically without constant fear of rejection. The ancient Stoics called this inner fortress. Epictetus taught that no one can harm your spirit unless you give them permission. And when your confidence comes from within, you stop handing out that permission so easily. But here's something people often misunderstand: true confidence is not arrogance. Arrogance is loud because it's insecure. It's a mask. Real confidence is quiet because it's rooted. It doesn't need to prove anything. You don't need to dominate the room. You just need to know you belong in it. You don't need to win every argument. You just need to know your truth. When you spend time with yourself, you learn not only your strengths, but also your weaknesses. And you stop being afraid of them. You stop pretending you're perfect and instead focus on being real. That authenticity makes you magnetic because people are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin. This is why the strongest people you'll ever meet are often the ones who are perfectly fine being alone. They've learned that their identity isn't a group project. They've learned to validate themselves without waiting for permission. And they carry themselves with a presence that says, I know who I am, and I'm okay if you don't approve. If you want to build this kind of confidence, you have to start by keeping promises to yourself. Not the big dramatic ones, but the small daily ones. If you tell yourself you'll wake up early, do it. If you commit to learning something new, follow through. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you're sending a message to your brain, I can count on me. And the more you can count on yourself, the less you'll depend on others to believe in you first. And yes, there will be moments when that self-belief is tested. People might call you selfish for putting your needs first. They might say you've changed, and they'll mean it as an insult. But you'll smile, because you'll know that change is the whole point. Growth always makes someone uncomfortable, especially those who benefited from your lack of confidence. The truth is, when you stop needing validation, you stop being easily controlled. You stop bending yourself into shapes to fit into places you've outgrown. And you stop wasting time trying to prove your worth to people who've already decided they can't see it. When you stand firmly in who you are, your life stops being a negotiation. You no longer accept crumbs of respect or scraps of affection. You understand that being alone is better than being in the wrong company, and that silence is better than words that belittle you. That is the power of self-confidence built in solitude. It's not dependent on anyone, and therefore no one can take it away. So if you've been waiting for someone to notice you, to choose you, to believe in you, let me say this: stop waiting. Start believing in yourself first. Because the day you realize you are enough without applause is the day you become unstoppable. Once you know who you are and you've built the kind of self-confidence that isn't shaken by every opinion or obstacle, something else becomes clear. You begin to see exactly where your energy has been going, and you realize how much of it has been wasted. The truth is, the biggest threat to our dreams isn't usually failure. It's distraction. We often imagine distraction as scrolling endlessly on our phones or watching one too many episodes of a show, but the deeper, more dangerous distractions are the ones disguised as important. They look like obligations, like conversations we didn't need to have, like arguments that lead nowhere, like commitments that serve everyone else but suffocate our own growth. These are the thieves of time that are hardest to notice because they wear the mask of responsibility or social necessity. When you choose solitude, you strip away a lot of these hidden distractions. You're no longer spending hours trying to manage other people's moods, proving your worth in conversations that go in circles, or engaging in activities that keep you busy, but never actually move you forward. You start to notice what really matters, and more importantly, what doesn't. Psychologically, focus is a muscle. The more scattered your attention, the weaker that muscle becomes. When you train it, when you direct it intentionally toward your goals, it grows stronger, and so does your ability to execute on your vision. Most people think they lack motivation, but in truth, they lack clarity. And you can't have clarity when your mind is full of other people's noise. In solitude, that clarity starts to form. You begin to see your goals not as vague ideas, but as specific, achievable targets. You start asking yourself, if I had only 1 year left to live, what would I give my energy to? And suddenly, all the petty dramas and endless distractions lose their appeal. Philosophically, this is about alignment. You can't walk in two directions at once. Every time you say yes to something that isn't aligned with your purpose, you are saying no to something that is. And the most dangerous word in the English language for a person with a dream is not no. It's later. Because later becomes never. When you are alone, you can schedule your life around what matters most to you, instead of squeezing your dreams into the leftover hours. You can work on your craft without feeling guilty, study something deeply without interruption, or map out your vision without having to constantly explain or defend it. You're free to immerse yourself fully in the process. And immersion is where mastery is born. But focus requires boundaries. It means you will have to say no, not because you don't care about people, but because you care about your purpose. It means accepting that some people will interpret your boundaries as arrogance, selfishness, or even betrayal. That's not your problem to fix. The truth is, when you commit to a meaningful goal, not everyone will understand, because not everyone is willing to make the same sacrifices. It's easy to envy people who achieve extraordinary things, but we often forget the price they pay for that focus. They miss events. They decline invitations. They choose long nights of work over instant gratification. They remove themselves from environments that pull them away from their vision. That's not luck, that's discipline. And discipline is easier to keep when you're not surrounded by constant distraction. Here's the other side of this. When you give your full focus to something you care about, you start to see progress. And progress is addictive. It fuels your momentum and strengthens your belief that your goal is possible. The small wins begin to compound into big ones. And with each step forward, you become less interested in anything that pulls you backward. But the opposite is also true. If you allow distractions to run your life, you'll begin to normalize mediocrity. You'll start to believe that big dreams are only for other people, and that your current situation is as good as it gets. That's the slow death of potential. And nothing is more tragic than a person who could have been extraordinary, but let their focus get scattered until their vision faded. So ask yourself right now, if your life stayed exactly as it is for the next 5 years, would you be happy with that? If the answer is no, then every distraction you allow is costing you more than just time. It's costing you the future you want. The good news is you don't have to change everything overnight. You just have to start protecting blocks of time like your life depends on it. Because in many ways, it does. Those blocks of time spent alone and undistracted are where you plant the seeds of the life you want. And those seeds will never grow if you keep letting weeds in. So let the world call you obsessed. Let them say you're too focused, too driven, too unavailable for things that don't matter. Because in the end, when you're standing where you always dreamed of being, you won't regret the invitations you declined or the noise you ignored of. You'll only regret the time you gave away to things that had nothing to do with who you were meant to become. And that's the thing about focus. It's not just about productivity, it's about respect. Respect for your time. Respect for your potential. Respect for the one life you've been given. Because when you respect it enough to protect it, you will find that almost everything else falls into place. Once you've found focus, you'll realize something else. Not everything and not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Protecting your peace and your energy is not selfish, it's survival. Because without peace, your focus will fracture, your confidence will wither, and your sense of self will slowly erode under the weight of constant emotional turbulence. We live in a culture that glorifies constant connection, always answering the phone, always replying instantly, always being there for everyone. But here's the hidden cost. When you are always available to everyone, you become unavailable to yourself. You can't protect your peace if you give away your attention like loose change to every person and every situation that demands it. And let's be honest, not every demand is worthy of you. There are people who will drain you without even meaning to. There are environments that feel normal only because you've been in them too long. But in reality, they keep you in a constant state of low-grade stress. And then there are those subtle emotional parasites. Situations that leave you feeling smaller, weaker, less hopeful every time you engage with them. Psychologically, your peace is tied to your mental bandwidth. If you're always fighting fires in other people's lives, you have no energy left for your own. If you're constantly absorbing other people's anger, fear, or negativity, your nervous system becomes trapped in survival mode. In that state, creativity dies, vision dies, even joy feels like a distant memory. Protecting your peace means learning the power of the word no. Not the aggressive no that pushes people away unnecessarily, but the quiet, unapologetic no that honors your boundaries. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to give a speech every time. No can simply mean, this doesn't serve my peace, so I'm stepping away. Philosophically, peace is not just the absence of conflict. It's the presence of alignment. It's when your actions, your environment, and your inner state are working together rather than against each other. And alignment rarely happens by accident. It's the result of deliberate choices. What you say yes to, what you walk away from, and what you refuse to let into your mind. The irony is, when you begin to protect your peace, you'll likely face resistance. People who were comfortable with you overextending yourself will notice the shift. They may accuse you of being distant or different. And they're right. You are different. You are no longer willing to be the emotional dumping ground or the easy option for people who refuse to take responsibility for their own chaos. But here's the thing. Real love, real friendship, real respect. They don't require you to sacrifice your well-being as proof of your loyalty. The people who truly value you will celebrate your boundaries because they understand that when you protect your peace, you become a better version of yourself in every area of life. When you allow yourself to step back from toxic environments, something shifts inside you. You start to breathe deeper. Your thoughts become clearer. Your decisions become more intentional. You begin to notice beauty again, in small things, in simple moments. And you realize that peace isn't something you have to chase. It's something you have to choose again and again. Choosing peace may mean unfollowing accounts that fill you with comparison or doubt. It may mean turning down opportunities that look good on the surface but would drain your spirit. It may mean letting go of people you love because love without respect for your boundaries will always cost you more than it gives. Some people confuse this with isolation, but there's a difference. Isolation is a retreat out of fear. Protecting your peace is a stand you take out of self-respect. You're not hiding from life. You're making space for the parts of life that actually matter. And here's the most beautiful part. When you start protecting your peace, you create a sanctuary within yourself, a place no one can touch without your permission. This sanctuary becomes your anchor during storms, your compass when you feel lost, and your fuel when you need strength. You'll find that you can face difficult conversations without absorbing the other person's energy. You can walk into chaotic environments and remain centered because you've trained yourself to guard your inner calm. And in that state, you are more effective, more creative, and more capable of helping others, but on your terms, not at the expense of yourself. So don't wait for peace to just happen. It won't. The world will always be loud. People will always have opinions. Life will always have demands. Peace is something you have to carve out deliberately and then defend fiercely. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't need more people who are constantly drained, burnt out, and resentful. It needs more people who are centered, clear, and grounded. And you can only be that person if you're willing to protect the one thing that allows you to show up fully your peace. So remember this, not everyone and not everything deserves a seat at your table. Protect your peace like your life depends on it, because it does.